Start recording. There you go. Start recording. I want to welcome everybody who is here today. There's Jeff Sumner who just joined us. He is with Veterans for Peace Atlanta, Chapter 125. Julie, I don't know you. And we'll do a little check-in just to say who we are and how we're doing. You want to start with Teresa? How you doing, Teresa?
Doing great. Having a busy day. I'm in the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, based in Columbus, Georgia. And
was doing, and I wrote it when she handed this to us.
Jeff, you got mute, please.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't see how to mute here. Hold on. Okay, yeah,
here. Bottom, where it says audio, just hit that.
Well, great. So I'll pass it to Julie to introduce herself. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa.
Julie.
Is it me? Is it my turn?
Yeah, Julie, just tell us who you are, how you doing,
okay.
What branch you're with.
Okay, I'm Julie Kabukani, and I'm from the Boston branch, and happy to be here.
Excellent, thank you so much. We got George.
All right. Hi, I'm George Friday. I'm in the Southern Piedmont branch, and I am having a lovely day. The weather's pretty pleasant, and that's enjoyable. I can pass it on to Jeff.
Yeah, you got unmute.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff, Veterans for Peace, Chapter 125, Atlanta. Glad to be with you.
Great. All right. You're doing all right today?
I'm living the dream.
I know, right? Thank you. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Adrian Bernal. I am with the Atlanta chapter of WILF, also with SARN, also with Veterans for Peace, and also with School of the Americas Watch here in Atlanta. So I want to thank you all for coming. This is being recorded, so even if you are not here, you'll be able to read this or watch it later. We meet once a month and we talk about border migration, justice issues. And I bring you some information that maybe you had not heard before. So that's why we're here today. I want to thank you for joining us. We do have a number of things that are happening in the area. One of which is that it has to do with border migration. The Veterans for Peace were out at Dobbins Air Force Base last week, and we were out there urging an end to the genocide in Gaza. I'll make these brief so that we can have time for questions at the end. That was very successful, had a lot of people honking and giving us a peace sign and other fingers as well, but that's to be expected, but it wasn't too bad. So that happened last week, and that was Veterans for Peace. Also, there's news about the Stop Cop City. Tomorrow, Monday, there's going to be a gathering at City Hall, Atlanta. And there was 116,000 petitions to stop Cop City, to have a vote on whether we should have Cop City. And the city of Atlanta has stalled for a year now. So that's happening tomorrow here in Atlanta. So if anybody's interested, or we'll keep you updated on what happens there. And finally, we have in news, we have the School of the Americas Watch. School of the Americas is where they train foreign soldiers to do the bidding of the U.S. when it comes to having coups, yes, as in Bolivia and other places like that. And the group, which was started by Father Roy, who is no longer a priest. He was defrocked for standing up for women's rights. And Father Roy started this organization. We were meeting in Columbus, where Teresa is joining us from. And we had huge crowds. Now we are in Nogales, Arizona. We took it out there because we wanted to be closer to the problems of border militarization and also the colonization of different countries. And of course, all that and the border, and you've got immigrants. People are coming here because they have no other choice, and they're coming to this country with some exceptions, and we'll talk about those too as well. They've got a couple of other things happening that you might be interested in. Yes, there is links in the chat, and you can click onto that. That is about what's going to be happening. That's going to be on the 16th and 17th. On the 16th, we'll be on the U.S. side. Nogales is a city that was cut in half when the Treaty of Dolores Hidalgo was signed, and the U.S. stole half of Mexico at the barrel of a gun. And so we have that happening. We also have the Tohono O'odham Nation. That was a nation of indigenous people, and their tribe, their nation was cut in half as well. So you can read that. That's the Mexican side of the border. We have a great sense of humor as Mexicans. I am Mexicano. My parents both came from Mexico. Let's see, did I leave anything out? So yes, please, as far as the School of America's Watch, for your chapters where you are, it would be great if you could spread the information. We would like to get a lot more people to join us in November. And also, we could appreciate your financial support, because like WILF, we are an organization that made up of a lot of older people, mainly in their 80s, and we don't have as many young people. We hope to change that with uniting with Veterans for Peace, WILF, SARN, and be able to re-inject more power, more energy into this organization. All right, moving on now to Mexico. As you probably are aware of, the 16th of September, which will be tomorrow, Monday, that will be Mexico's Independence Day. No, it's not the Cinco de Mayo. That's a different holiday. That's when we beat the French. But 16 de septiembre in 1810, Father Miguel Hidalgo, he yelled from Mexico's Zócalo, "Viva Mexico!" Yeah, "Viva Mexico!" And this is important because Mexico had been ruled for 300 years by Spain, by Spanish colonial rule, and they beat them 300 years, longer than the U.S. has been around. They had suffered that, and of course we had generations of civilization when the Spanish arrived, and you can look into that. There's a couple of real important things that are happening. I'll give you just a nutshell what's happening in Mexico. As you know, Andrés Manuel López Obrador is the president of Mexico, and he just passed judicial reform. And judicial reform, if you read anything in the United States media, state-sponsored media, I would call it, what's happening there was that AMLO wanted to seize control of the judiciary, and nothing is further from the truth. What AMLO was doing is opening up. The problem with Mexico's judiciary, as in here, is that if you have money, you walk. And they had so many judges that were beholden to the corporations, and therefore did anything that they wanted, the corporations wanted, the judge would sanction. So what this reform has done is that now the people are going to get to vote for who's going to be the judges. And I know we've talked about in this country before the Supreme Court and what they have done to women's rights, and how the response has been to pack the court, to make it more judges. But wouldn't it be great if we could just vote the rascals out? And that's what Mexico's doing. And that's what the judicial reform is all about. Even though if you read stuff like the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, know that that is not the correct information. I follow this every day. The other thing that's happening, which is very important, is that on October 1st, AMLO will hand over the presidential sash to Claudia Sheinbaum, the first woman president of Mexico. They're from the same party, so everything that AMLO has been doing in what is called the fourth transformation of Mexico, looking after the people and not the corporations, she will continue this for the next 6 years. So very exciting time to be to Mexico. If you can, now would be a good time to move there. Hint, hint. Yours truly hopefully will be there in a couple of years as things get weirder and weirder in this country. But anyway, the other big thing that happened this month that you are sure are aware of is September 11th. But we're talking about September 11th, 1973. Some of us were in high school and some of us were not born yet. But what happened then was the Allende coup. That was Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger, and they overthrew the government of Salvador Allende. He was the first democratically elected socialist in Latin America. And Kissinger and Nixon, I think it was Nixon, said, make their economy scream. And so the United States passed sanctions like we see happening all over, and made people very uncomfortable like they do in Cuba and other places. And there was a coup that we supported, and that brought a lot of suffering to the people of Chile, because then they went after everybody they thought was progressive or leftist. They tortured them, they killed them, they threw them out of helicopters into the ocean. It was horrific. But anyway, there's a real good documentary that I've included in the chat, and that's by Ben Norton, who's a fabulous independent journalist. He writes for Geopolitical Economy on the Chile coup. It's a good story if you're not aware of it, and even if you are, it's got a lot of details from Ben. The other thing is that I'm very optimistic today because I think that we can make a difference. We can make it happen. Ralph Nader was on a program with Brianna Joy Gray, and she asked him about the situation of the world today. Also, the link is in the chat. Ralph Nader with Brianna Joy Gray. Incredible. Most of you know, have been following Ralph Nader for many years. He ran for president 5 times. Unbelievable. But at 90, he's still very sharp. And he has given us his view on what's happening in this country. And one of the things he said, it's very important for us to spread the word about what's happening in this country. And that's what we do. And that's why this committee is very important, because you're here today, but you also have to spread the word of what's happening. I'll do my best to give you links and information. But when the people have the information, as in what's happening in Gaza, they will go to the streets. And that was the other point that Ralph made that I thought was very good. He was talking about, Brianna Joy asked him, did the Democrats boot Biden? And his answer was that Biden was booted by the people, by the hundreds of thousands of people that were in the streets protesting the genocide in Gaza. So a lot of times we wonder if we're doing any good by being in the streets, but this is a situation that's important because we see that there were some things that happened there. The people are recognizing it. The Democrats won't do anything different, neither will the Republicans. But if you'll recall back when Lyndon B. Johnson was the president and they wanted to pass reform, civil liberties, and he met with Dr. King and other people, and he said, make me do this, make me do it. And so what he meant was, let's have hundreds of people in the street to demand this. And that's important. We also saw it when Kissinger and Nixon were in the White House, and there were demonstrations to stop the war. and Nixon turned to Haldeman or somebody, and he said, "They're going to come and get us." So it's the politicians will fear us. There's a great Ralph says something about that. What happens is you're in the streets, like that old adage: they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fear you, and then you win. So that's why it's important to be in the streets. But great interview. You really will enjoy it. It talks about the problems we have now with the third party system. We don't have a democracy. It's only the duopoly. And on that note, there's also a link to my radio show. That's 2 hours of information. A lot of the stuff we cover here. It's called Beyond Borders, the people of the Caribbean and Latin America today. It airs on WRFG 89.3 in Atlanta, or you can find it on the web, or just click on that and you'll have yesterday's show. It's always on a Saturday. All right, well, long introduction. Now we're going to go into our Latin America migration roundup. And I'm going to cover a couple of these countries because they're important.
Adrian, my hand has been up for quite some time.
That's okay. I was doing my soliloquy. Go ahead, Teresa.
Well, I think that much to my chagrin, people think that the migration crisis and the racist attacks against immigrants is all about Mexico or people in Latin America. Well, people of African descent are really under attack and have been for years. I remember how the Haitians were treated in the 80s, being blamed for bringing HIV and AIDS to this country. And I was in Boston in the 90s when the nursing home workers, Haitians, were under attack for that level of xenophobia and prejudice. So I just urge us all to look at the disparities between people of European descent migrating here and people of color, particularly people of African and Latin descent. But let's not forget the Africans, because they get deported pretty fast too. And so the other thing I wanted to say is on the SOA Watch event. In my role as Advancing Human Rights Chair, I reached out to the treasurer because we have a $500 allotment as an issue committee, and it's use it or lose it based on the fiscal year ending in December. So after talking to the other working group convener, because AHR has 4 working groups, Adrian convenes this working group. We have Fatima Peary Smith, who convenes the UN Decade Reparations Working Group. And I convene the Ending Mass Incarceration and Housing Justice Working Group. And in this final quarter of the year, border migration and housing have plans. So when I sent the email, which I did copy you on, Adrian, I asked for them to send us the money so that it could be used by BMJ and by the Fannie Lou Hamer Housing Justice Project, which is a statewide project in Georgia. And so hopefully when that money comes sometime soon, it could be used to support the border work that is going to be, I believe it's at the Arizona border. And so we do have 2 branches in Arizona. So in terms of reaching out to them, because part of these working group meetings is that we really do the work. So it means that we gotta make sure that the activities we're doing engage as many branches as possible. And the branches that are in the Southwest area of the United States who might be able to come over to the SOA Watch activity in November, well, that should be worked on. But I did want people to know, since we don't have a kind of meeting of the whole, so the conveners of the Advancing Human Rights get to decide where the money gets spent. So in the issue of, in the spirit of transparency, I want to ask to make sure there are no objections with the disbursement requests, so that the funds can be used for the BMJ border work in November, as well as the tour around housing justice, which is going to take in Georgia and meetings in Georgia with our partners, as well as a trip to DC to get the DC branch, because they got major crisis with homelessness that's gone on for years and years in DC. And then, of course, a stop in North Carolina to talk about the outrageous gentrification that's going on in major cities in North Carolina. So that's a kind of October plan, that if we get the money in time enough, the last half of October will be spent in that kind of short tour that I'm pulling together. So I just wanted to let people know about those particular activities and to urge people to support the border activity in November. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Teresa. Yes, thanks. Good points. And yes, I just put the link for my radio show on for you all to listen to if you wish to. Teresa, thank you so much for the point about the, we always think about people coming across the border being European descent, but there is a lot of Latinos. The first thing I was going to start off was in my Latin America migration roundup was what's happening in Haiti. Anthony Blinken went down there last week, and he met with the people that now are running Haiti. The Black Alliance for Peace put out some really powerful statements against that. The problem is that the US and the core group want to control Haiti. They've been doing this for a long time just to protect their interests. And of course, they've got the 400 troops that came from Africa. And now there's talk about getting the UN down there. There was an interesting article about how the Haitians, they signed a deal with Guantanamo, where they want to put Haitians that are being repatriated in Guantanamo. It's just the height of I don't know what you call it, but it's just the height of American imperialism to put those people in jail, basically. This is not the first time. They did it before, I think in the 60s, where they've used Guantanamo and they took Haitians over there. But the Haitians are responding to all of the things that the United States has been repressing them for ever since they got independence, since in the 1900s. The US stole their gold. They went in there with a gunship, and General Smedley Butler led a troop of Marines. So they marched up the street, they went to the bank, and they took their gold, just like we do to all these other countries. But that was happening in Haiti. And of course, you've heard a lot about the Haitians eating the pets in Springfield. Important to remember that Springfield had a population of 400,000. And no, they didn't all arrive at once, but there's about 20,000. Okay, let me back up. 40,000 people, and now 20,000 Haitians have arrived. Doesn't seem like a real good idea to put that many people in there. They're not undocumented. They got a form of asylum, temporary protection order, TPOs. And so that's what's happening. And of course, Republicans are saying that they're eating people's pets. And the Haitians have different kinds of, hold on, the people have different kinds of customs. So I don't know. Teresa, what do you think?
Well, I think politically, we can't make a caricature of why Haiti is treated the way Haiti is treated. Because in 1804, the Haitian Revolution, where they ran France out of there, Haiti had to pay reparations to France for many, 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 many decades. It just ended, I think, not too long ago, maybe in the 2000s, or 19 something or other. But Haiti is a rich country with mineral resources, etc. But it's been exploited by the US and using Haitian bad leaders, as we know, has been done in Africa, which Julie, being here, can speak to the issue of Mobutu. Well, Haiti had a Papa Doc. So for many years, Papa Doc took the money, got rich, and did nothing for the Haitian people, which is why Haiti is considered the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So let's not start talking about eating dogs and cats when we can talk politically and seriously about why Haiti has been exploited as a nation by France and the US in particular. Let's not turn it into a caricature because it is a political problem. I remember when the Haitians were growing oranges for the Grand Marnier liquors, and how France threatened them when they struck. And so France pulled out the making of the Grand Marnier liquor. So you have high unemployment and high poverty in Haiti because of the way the imperialists and the colonizers have treated the people of Haiti. So let's do this politically and not talk about what Trump and those other people are doing with that nonsense. Let's talk about why Haiti is really the way it is because of imperialism. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, very true. And yes, Julie, did you want to comment? Hey, Julie, I'll give you a chance to unmute there.
Yeah. Yes, Teresa is absolutely true, and she got the facts. That's exactly what's being done. I think there is a type of stereotyping when you try to make the community look bad because you have a specific political political need to fulfill. So that's what's happening. And as an African coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where I grew up, I know exactly what is going on. I mean, my country is one of the most underdeveloped country in the world, despite being having tons and tons of mineral resources. But the people live in abject poverty. Okay, and this is being, and they're using bad leaders, just like Teresa said. So since I was born in 1961, so when Lumumba was killed, because Lumumba was a leader who was trying to make things right, and he was killed, by Western
CIA
for the interest. So that's what I want to say. What's happening with Haiti is very sad, but it's been happening and the world is looking. And I'm grateful for activists like you who say things like they are, hopefully one day, maybe not my generation, things will change.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Yes, thank you. And big respect. I know about the Democratic Republic of Congo, and that was the CIA that killed Lumumba.
Yes.
Going back to what Teresa was saying about keeping it political, it was Hillary Clinton that was against raising the minimum wage in Haiti because they have a lot of manufacturing there. But it's unbelievable that the Democrats did that. And also, yeah, there's a lot of gold and even oil in Haiti, and that's why they want to control it. So anyway, that was my report on Haiti. Thank you so much.
Cece and Peggy joined us. Could you acknowledge them
Yes.
from the Metro Atlanta branch?
Thank you for joining us, Cece and Peggy. Thank you.
Sorry I'm late. I apologize. I'm traveling and getting my days and times mixed up. Sorry, but I'm glad to be here.
No problem. Thank you, Peggy. Welcome. Welcome. Another one of our allies, Peggy here, Wilf, and also Sarn. And okay, so let me go on a little bit more to I've got a couple other countries I wanted to cover. Venezuela, you know about what's happening in Venezuela. The United States says Maduro stole the election. That's not true. All of the ballots were turned into the Supreme Court. They counted them all, and it is true. Maduro won, but the U.S. will not recognize it. They want to have another situation like they did with Juan Guaido, but the world's getting tired of that. Also, we have heard, again, disparaging information about the gangs that are here from Venezuela. And you'll hear Trump say that Venezuela emptied their jails, and that's not true. They did not empty their jails. People that are coming over and are responsible sometimes for this violence, they were called the guarimbas. And when, for the last, since Hugo Chavez was elected, these are right-wingers that go and they do horrible things. They belong to gangs. They burn people alive. As in, we're talking in Haiti, they'll put a burning tire on them. It's been horrible. But those are the guarimbas. So yeah, I just mentioned that because, in the media, you hear some stories and you think, oh, that can't be true. But you got to dig deep. And these are things that are actually happening. But they're not emptying their jails. These are people that have lost and now came here because the United States opened their door for them, as they have done to places they don't like Cuba, Nicaragua. And they'll say, oh, you were from that country, you must be oppressed. Come on in. So that's what's happening in Venezuela with that situation. Any comments, additions? If not, we'll go on to talk about
Well, Adrian,
Colombia.
I thought Lenny from the Cuba and Bolivarian Committee would come today. She did register, but how the Cuban immigrants get treated, the Gusanos who have been coming here for decades since the Cuban Revolution, and they're welcome. And so they're down there in Florida, real right-wingers who are doing everything they can to keep the embargo going. So the disparate treatment in the case of immigrants is something that we should notice, who's welcome and who's not. But the last thing I want to say about the xenophobia, if people follow the German elections that happened a week ago in Germany, one of the big issues is migration. They want to keep those Africans and Arabs and other people out of Germany. It's kind of like what went on in Great Britain around the whole Brexit thing. So the xenophobia, as another expression of fascism, is spreading. It's spreading in Europe, and we know it's being promoted here by certain political interests. And so we have to be very careful because I argue with Black people a lot about, oh, those Mexicans are taking our jobs kind of thing. That's been the narrative that's gone on for a long time. So how do we build unity across the color lines so that people understand that people migrating around the world? As one person said to me many years ago, I didn't cross the border crossed me a long time ago. And so I think that's the way we have to think of it, especially since we know all of the stolen land that used to be Mexico. So we have to be able to change the narrative politically. So we're talking about how things came to be the way they are. And so it's just a case of stolen land. So it's all about stolen land when it comes to the Palestinians, when it comes to people from Mexico, and it's just all about stolen land. Because I want to say I'm on the land of the Creek Nation. Muskogee County loves to tell you their history of how this used to be a Creek village in the 1800s, and they took it over and made it Columbus, Georgia. Oh, they printed out. I mean, they don't lie about it. And when you go at Fort Moore, you see all these markers where they fought with the indigenous people and how they won battle after battle with the Cherokee, the Muskogee, and the Creek to steal that land that's now Fort Moore, that used to be Fort Benning. So we have to really begin to tell the story about the stolen land. So for the U.S. to say that people can't migrate here after the U.S. came here and stole after the Europeans came here and stole every inch of the land that we're on now. So I think in terms of how we talk about border migration justice, we have to really change the narrative so people will stop all that xenophobia craziness, talking about Mexicans taking our jobs and stuff. So I deal with that among the Black working class a lot in terms of trying to knock people alive on what really went down. So I'm not going to say anymore. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thanks a lot. That was great. And you know, in that line, what we don't say is the reason people come to this country or Europe is because of the wars, because of the corporations that have gone in there, and that they are making life horrible for them. They'll bring up dams. They mine gold, for example. This happened in El Salvador. They mine gold. Of all of the rivers in El Salvador, only one was not polluted because they used cyanide to filter out the gold. Okay, so you can't fish, you can't use the water from the lake, you can't grow your crops because they have been ruined. The water's been ruined, and that happens all over Latin America, and in Africa, of course. You know how many places that like in the Sudan, we send weapons to that place, in Yemen, and of course the Democratic Republic of Congo. Like Julie said, very, very rich, but made poor. There was a book about it. Anyway, we won't go into that because I want to move on. But yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much for that information. And we have to make people aware that they're coming here because of policies, U.S. policies. And that's what's out. No one talks about that, right? I mean, they look at the backyard, and all they're doing is helping their own corporations to come up here. And that's why we have these folks. People, like the president of Mexico says, people don't come over here. I mean, they might come because want to make a better living, but they would rather stay at home with their families. And we make it hard for them to do that. All right, let me move on to Colombia.
Also, Adrian, you need to talk about the various visas that the U.S. provides to bring workers here to be exploited. And also, I remember years ago, Ford, GM, and all those plants, which we could refer to as the maquiladoras.
Mhm.
So lining the border. So we have to really focus in on capitalism and corporate exploitation as to why things are the way they are. And now anybody you call for customer service, you talking to somebody in the Philippines, because they exploit the Philippine workers. So they work for the airlines and Walmart and every company you could think of, and you know they get paid less. And the union I was in, Communications Workers of America, we've been fighting the offshoring of customer service for a long time now. So to really be able to have that analysis of how US corporations exploit workers around the world, and particularly in the global South. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Yes. And speaking of the maquiladoras, this is going back 20 years or so, but the unions, they formed some unions in Mexico, but they were the same as the unions here in the United States. I don't remember which one it was, but the purpose of the union was not to represent the workers. It was to convince the workers that they were getting a good deal. So that's over now. All right, let's go on to Colombia. Something real interesting is happening in Colombia. As you know, they have a leftist president. He used to be a revolutionary. He got elected president. He'd been mayor of Medellin. And what's happening now is, speaking of unions, a rich man who is connected to the conservative former president, he has used his union members, 500,000 of them all over Colombia, to block the streets in Colombia. And the goal is not that they want better wages or anything. Their goal is because they want to destabilize Colombia. And that is what's you can hear when you look at the news from trusted sources like Telesur down there. They are working a soft coup to get this socialist, he's a socialist, out of power. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be interesting. But they're worried. The people in power are worried. And this is the same thing they did in Chile, you know, like with Nixon saying, make their economy scream. That's what they want to do in Colombia. They want to get this guy out and put in the right-wing conservatives again. All right, moving on to Argentina. As you know, they have a libertarian president, Javier Milei. And Milei is a piece of work. He said he was going to balance the budget. And boy, did he ever. And how did he do that? He fired people. Okay, real easy to balance the budget when you do that. He cut the money that was going for the soup kitchens. It's just crazy. And it's important because a lot of people look and say, oh, well, he's done good. Look, he's balanced the budget. But on the backs of the poor, as happens all the time, as we know. So anyway, that's what's happening with Milei. The people are in the streets, and get this, right? So Milei passed a law that if you protest, it's illegal now. So they had the judiciary workers the other day. They were in the Justice Building. As they came out, the police beat them up. Then they had the pensioners, the people in retirement age. They were demonstrating, and the police beat them up, and they used tear gas. So, folks, this is kind of scary. I'm not scared, of course, but this is what may happen here in the U.S. if this trend continues, and also in other countries. Like Teresa was saying, not only did the Germans go to the right, but also the French. The French have also elected right-wing representatives. But we just have to educate people on the issues and organize so they go out into the street. All right, now I want to move over to Chile. And that's the last thing I want to cover. Okay, Chile, like I said, 9/11, the very first, it was, I think, the third coup that the US undertook. I think the first one was in Iran, and then they went to Guatemala with Arbenz, and then they went to Chile. They really had perfected it by this point. And So I imagine you all have heard of Southcom. Uh, Jeff can jump in here in a minute about that. Southcom is a branch of the United States military that focuses on South America, um, Central America, and South. Now they're expanding it to include Mexico. That was under Trump, but General Richardson, Laura Richardson, she has been leading it. She has been going to all of these countries, and I have sound bites where she'll say, "Oh, there's all of this mineral wealth in these countries, and we have to get it for our corporations before the Chinese do." And so it's obviously a grab, and they talked the president of Chile. He was a student leader, and then he got elected president. But he is not very reliable. Sometimes he goes to the left, and sometimes he goes to the neoliberal right. And so he accepted a base, a U.S. base in Chile. He's also, right now, they're doing drills in the sea with the US and Chilean military. And before that, they were part of RIMPAC. And RIMPAC is an exercise that went on for like a whole month. And they had hundreds of ships and planes and soldiers out in Hawaii. And they were doing exercises. This was a problem for the president of Chile because he was working hand in hand, or his soldiers were, with Israel, and he is against the genocide, rightly so, of what's happening in Gaza. And but he held his nose and sent his troops in. And this is connected to the SOA Watch, because when Father Roy started the organization, he would go to these different countries and ask them, please do not send your soldiers to the School of the Americas, where they were taught rape, torture, and murder. We call it the School of the Assassins. And so there's a link there too. And that's what's happening in Latin America right now. And that's why we have all this migration. Jeff, are you still with us? Boy, you dropped out. Too bad. But yeah, he's a Veterans for Peace member. And so any questions? Let's open it up. Peggy, you look like you want to say something. You're muted.
Well, Adrian, what I put in the chat is we need GLAR or others who focus on migration 24/7 to say to us, what does a just migration policy look like? Because right now, when everybody's in motion around the elections, because we elected our state reps, our congressional reps, in addition to the president of the United States. So right now, when we're having different forums in the community, we need to be asking folks running for office the kind of questions that say we will get to a just migration policy for the states as well as for the U.S. Congress, because they've been dragging their feet on protecting migrants and the way children are being treated. It's just unconscionable. So what does a just migration policy look like? I hope we can answer that question at the next meeting, possibly with a speaker from GLAR. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Teresa. Very good. Yes. Treatment for children. In my work as an interpreter, I sometimes see a lot of parents and how they deal with defects with the police when their kids get in trouble. And so I have had a lot of experience with these children. And I don't know what you mean about the treatment. The children, I guess you're talking about when they come through the border. Yeah, they keep them in cages and things like that. Of course, you know that wasn't just Trump. That was before him. That was Obama as well. So no one has clean hands when it comes to migration.
That's my point about the bipartisan need for people to care about the human rights of children and other migrants who the border crossed. So that's what, in terms of where the working group goes, Adrian, what should be done. We have to get to the point where we're talking public policy and what should be done. So I'm suggesting that GLAR and other people, because I know they have worked on policy issues. So finding migrant justice groups that work on policy at the federal and state level to come here, you know,
Yeah,
get a speaker. So try to do that for the October
Good.
meeting.
excellent. All right, Peggy, do you have something to say?
I just wanted to ask if you knew the name of the Colombian capitalist that you said was using his workers.
Uribe,
What?
Uribe. He was president.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and President Uribe is famous for stealing peasant
Yeah.
lands, sending it. Remember, they had the henchmen. Then he would send his henchmen out to the countryside and say, "This now belongs to Mr. Uribe. You got to get off his property." And they did that all over Colombia. Yeah, there's a lot of disparity in Colombia. It's huge. And the president after Uribe, the one just before this guy, I can't think of his name now, but he was also the rich guy that's involved in supporting the overthrow of the president of Colombia.
Tell us the name of the vice president, the woman again.
Oh, yes, her name. I'll have to look it up. She is the first African American descent Colombian, and she is wonderful. She worked her way up, and she got her law degree, and she is the vice president. She has actually, they shot at her, of course, but she survived. But there's a lot of violence going on, and you know that's Francia Marquez.
Mm.
Francia, like Francia Marquez.
Yeah.
Well, the Afro-Colombians had a major movement about 20 years ago, and they came to Durham and other places to talk about their movement. So I'd like to know the status of the Afro-Colombians inside of Colombia, because that's a rich history for the Afro-Colombians. But we're coming to the end of our 1 hour.
Yep.
So there's lots that could come up for the October meeting. So what will be the date of the October meeting? We meet on the third Sunday usually. So what will be that date? So we can all
20th.
put it on our calendars.
Looks like the 20th, October 20th at 5 o'clock, not 4.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
In my calendar.
Yeah. Well, I will see you then, if not sooner. There's a lot going on.
Yes, thank you all for coming. You know,
Anyway,
please contribute the next time and tell your chapters. We need to grow the message. All
Bye.
right.
yeah, and
So-
George will send
Adrian.
out the recording in the chat, right, George?
Yes. Bye.